Howdy, folks. Welcome back or welcome aboard. You are listening to the Doc Owen Show. You may sit down after our opening jingle. Consider that exercise period is over. You might want to grab a pencil and a pad and sit back and be ready to make some notes and absorb. We're going to have a very, very good show for you tonight. I'll tell you straight up front, told you last week, we are operating without our wingman tonight. Uncle Bocce had other plans. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but
I don't know either.
he had an out-of-town guest that's coming in, so we don't have him with us this evening, and we did not pre-record, but he will be back next week. No worries.
Yep.
All right. As you can tell, Ms. Surefire is in the house. Ima, say hello.
Howdy, folks.
Barely coming across.
Howdy, folks.
There you go. Okay. As you know, if you're new with us, you should know, we are all over social media as Doc Owen Show, DocOwenShow. That's how to find us on Facebook. That's the Twitter handle. That's who we are on Pinterest and Instagram, and the number keeps growing. The more we can attach one to the other, we are always on top of it and trying to get it done. We also have a blog, interestingly enough, called DocOwenShow.com, DocOwenShow, and we are getting a little bit more active out there. Blogs are not an easy thing to do if you really want to keep them up, and we have always been more focused on the audio portion of our blog, which is a once-a-week, 1-hour broadcast, as you are listening to. So that's kind of our audio blog. We also have the best way to follow us or to keep in touch or to even get back into the archives and find out what we might have said about certain subjects at a certain point in time is our app. We have a free app that you can download from the iTunes store or the PlayStation, I think it's called, for the Android devices. And when you do that, it'll load you up with all the past shows, as well as it's a good place to listen to the current shows, 10, 12, 15 minutes at a time. You can pause it and go back to it and start it when and where you want to. We always start the show in a very traditional manner, and that is we have a moment or two of inspiration provided by Ms. Surefire, generally followed by This Day in History with Uncle Bocce. We're going to have to skip that. And then I come up with a leadership quote or two. So without further ado, as they say, Ms. Surefire, take it away.
And tonight's quote comes from ChristianPost.com. It's from the book of Acts, chapter 20, verse 35. In everything I did, I showed you that by this kind of hard work, we must help the weak, remembering the words the Lord Jesus himself said, "It is more blessed to give than to receive." So it means work hard so that you may use your skills and talents to help others.
Well done.
Thank you. It makes me think about after I'm through with my terminal degree.
It happens to a lot of people that get terminal degrees.
Yeah, it's terminal.
It certainly did to me. It makes you want to give back.
Yes.
You're through with the... Actually, that's part of the charter of becoming a PhD. Mm-hmm. Part of the responsibility is you are no longer a consumer of knowledge. You are a provider of knowledge. And so that turns things around, and you get caught up in some sort of a passion or another. So It's all good. It's more blessed to give than to receive. So You're telling me that is not just for Christmas Day?
No, it could be any time of the year.
Wow.
Gifts are accepted at any time.
I'll bet there's a lot of people that never thought about that.
I know.
Our quote tonight comes from a book of 250 optimistic quotes for Achieving the Extraordinary is the name of it. And guess where it came from? The Optimist Club. How clever. Tonight, and I hope that this is appropriate for the show. That's the intent, as they always are. Good communicate. This is from Anne Morrow Lindbergh. All right. Good communication is as stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after.
That's pretty good. So I like that.
We're gonna make a hard charge at providing that much stimulation this evening. We got a really good show. We're going to kind of take a page from the Trumpinator and his conversation that he had with the press today. We'll go into a little bit of that, but I want to cover a lot of current events and try to connect some dots that our young audience is probably not connecting. And they're out there, but you just kind of got to know where to look for them. So I'm going to try to bring them to the forefront. And we'll hear from an old friend of ours, Pastor Greg Locke, who had a couple of things to say, one right after the election and another one that is rather timeless. So let's dive into it. We'll go at it. But before we do, we've got another thing that's almost becoming a tradition with us as well. And it was appropriately labeled by Ms. Surefire as Black Laughs Matter. That's Laughs. Black Laughs Matter.
That's right.
And it kind of sets the tone for what is to follow, called The Doc Owens Show. So, Ms. Surefire, if you'll play our little Black Laughs Matter clip.
I sure will.
I'll take a sip of my beverage.
Okay.
Give my remarks to all of the Trump haters, all of the Hillary Clinton supporters, all of the people that said that my Trump was gonna lose. So I say to you this morning, the day after the election,
Thank you very much. That's out there on YouTube. You ought to go find it. It's absolutely hilarious. That's where we got it. President Donald J. Trump held a press conference today. I think it may be the first press conference he has held in person since he became president. I'm not sure of that fact, but I'm pretty sure of that fact. And for an hour and 15 minutes, he had a conversation with members of the press, the mainstream media, as well as what is now being referred to as the alternate press, or those of us who are working our way through the maze called the internet and all of the internet radio networks that are out there. And if you've not found one to be a part of, I highly recommend that you do. All you need to do is to run a little search, affectionately known as a Google search, although Google's not the only one that does it. And just Google search on the top 3 internet talk radio networks, and you'll find multiples listed, but you will find the Doc Owens Show and others like us. Very good shows, to quote Trump, on all 3 of those networks. Varying times, but we are on 7 days a week somewhere at some time during the afternoon or evening, besides our live broadcast. So just a little hint. But anyway, the press conference today, if you're not familiar with it, I watched some of it on Facebook. He had 109,000 viewers on Facebook. Okay? That's not to mention Twitter. That's not to mention all the other social media that they broadcasted on. And not to mention that it was probably on parts of it, clips from it, I'm sure, will be on mainstream media. Some of them may have even carried the entire thing live. Basically, bottom line was Mr. Trump had a conversation with the mainstream media that they are painting themselves into a corner. And as we say, there is a saying in the oil patch, is where I got it. That's the first law of holes. Like when you're drilling a hole. And if you're in a hole, if you're digging yourself a hole, stop digging. That's the first law of holes. And that's what Mr. Trump was trying to express to the mainstream media, was that they have lost the trust of the American people. And his case was, guys, I won. We've been trying to tell you this for quite some time. And recent events around the presidency and the leaks and the Russia this and the Russia that, they're continue to dig themselves a hole with what President Trump refers to as fake news. That's his polite way of telling them and the American public that they are not telling the truth. Whether they are knowingly not telling the truth or unwittingly not telling the truth does not matter. They are journalists. They are supposedly chartered with delivering the truth. The tagline for our show is delivering truth to youth. We try to make that the case. We work very hard not to put a bunch of bullshit out on the waves. That's just the nature of the beast. Sometimes it is well received. Sometimes it is not well received. But that's okay. And Trump basically went through the same thing. He didn't rant. He didn't rave. He didn't act like a spoiled child. He didn't, act like an egomaniac. He was very well controlled. And as he told them, he was thoroughly enjoying it. That's a statement that most people say when they're winning in a negotiation or in a particular heated situation. When they know they're right and they know they're going to come out on top, anything you throw at them in the interim is just going to bounce off. Eventually, the truth will rise to the top.
That's true.
And I'm sure Mr. Trump, among others, knows that. You might have been here if you have not been hearing words like the deep state and neocons and all of these never Trumpers, and as a matter of fact, there are literally thousands of never Trumpers, anti-Trumpers, not my president, hashtag resist, and there's just all kinds of acronyms and things going on out there to prevent President Trump from ever being effective. They're just in absolute denial that he is the president of the United States. And nothing he says or does is going to dissuade them from that. What was the one that I saw when I was surfing the net at 3 o'clock in the morning the other day? I've forgotten. But it was like hashtag not unforgiven, but something like that. That not my government, or they're just
all that. Yeah,
they're all over the place. Let me give you a little trip down history lane. In 1951, we had a president by the name of Dwight David Eisenhower, a.k.a. Ike. He won the president. He was a general in World War II. He won the presidency with the slogan, "I like Ike." And everybody did like Ike. He was a typical military top-end officer who spoke the truth in no uncertain terms. All right? Mm-hmm. He didn't flower it. He wasn't a George S. Patton. He wasn't quite as colorful as Patton. but he was a heck of a general and a very good president. When he left office in 1951, he warned in his exit speech, he warned the American people of what is currently today referred to as the deep state. In other words, the sub-government or shadow government, as some people refer to it. He was talking about the CIA, the FBI. There was no Department of Homeland Security then. There was no NSA, National Security Administration. We didn't have all of those things, but everything that existed at that time. And it became known as a result of his speech as the military-industrial complex. The bankers and the manufacturers and the big-time people that grew up making a lot of money in World War II that did not want to give up that income, and they sustained their businesses by creating war. And he warned the American public about them, and he warned subsequent presidents about them. All right? And we have part of what Tea Party type individuals have been pushing back against and lashing out against since 2008 was not Barack Obama. It was not the individual that was in the office. It was against all politicians. It was against government in general, because this deep state, this shadow government, these shadowy people who got so very good at doing things all around the world and blaming others by putting out false news releases and by putting out false information. And, they're masters at their craft. The problem is they are now using that craft on the United States. They are now using that craft of misinformation and innuendos and suspicion through the mainstream media against our current administration. Trump knows that. The reason they're coming on so strong is because Trump, Donald J. Trump, President, say it with me, President Donald J. Trump, is an outsider. He does not need their funding. He does not need their approval. He needs nothing from them. And so they are going bonkers. Mm-hmm. We just lost the shortest tenured director of the NSA, a fellow by the name of Mike Flynn, just resigned on Monday as a result of some innuendos about his conversations with Russia prior to inauguration. After the election, but prior to inauguration, he was a member of the transition team moving one administration into the other. The handoff of, if you can imagine, if you've ever been through a corporate transition, or you've transitioned out of your little job into a bigger job, you always had the responsibility to hand off information to the person that was going to be doing your job. And you were receiving information from the person whose job you were going to be doing. Right? Mm-hmm. That's called transition. It's the same in government, only much, 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 much bigger. There's more of these transitions going on, and they are at a higher level. The question is, as President Donald J. Trump is trying to point out, not that Mr. Flynn had a conversation with the ambassador from Russia during the transition, but that his private, personal telephone was tapped and recorded without his knowledge. Let me tell you something I just learned today. On December the 19th, after the election, the Director of Homeland Security and then President Barack Obama signed off on a change of policy in the NSA, the National Security Administration. The NSA gets all information having to do with international relations, phone taps, intercepted email, everything comes through the NSA. Then they decide which sub-agency gets that piece of information, if anybody. So they decide what is in the purview of the FBI, what is in the purview of the CIA, what is in the purview of Department of Homeland Security, what is in the purview of ICE, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay? They are the gatekeeper. They're the manager of this back channel of information. And that's the way it's always been. On December the 19th, they changed those rules. And on January the 3rd, 17 days before President Donald J. Trump was sworn in, the then Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, signed off on it and made it the standard procedure. So you're asking, what did they do? Here's what they did. They opened up the raw information to over 16 agencies in the federal government. 16 agencies now have the raw data that used to be confined to the National Security Administration to do with as they please. Think about that. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking for leaks, do you folks know anything about what an exponent is? Do you know what that does to a mathematical formula, or as they call them today, algorithm?
Yep.
2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. But 2 to the third power, called an exponent, is 8. 2 to the fourth power is 16 versus 2 times 4, which is 8. You see what I'm saying? You've just taken the potential of a leak of information that may or may not be true or may not have any bearing to the 16th power. When Rex Tillerson took over the State Department, and it's already out there that heads are rolling, okay? There were 800 people. Before this man even got confirmed by the Senate and came on the job, there were 800 of his employees, his future employees that were already working at the State Department. 800 of them signed a pledge saying that they would not support the President of the United States. And that's just what these are just the things that we know about.
I can only imagine.
Can you? I can too. And it's extremely difficult to find all of them. to find all these moles, to find all these resistors, to find all these people that are not only not going to do what you ask them to do, they're going to work hard to undermine what you're asking them to do. Mm-hmm. Not asking them, telling them it's their job. Can you imagine what Mr. Trump and his people are faced with? Let me read you something.
Crazy.
There's a fella out there that's got a great blog that you ought to sign up for and read, and his name is Paul Craig Roberts. Dr. Roberts has a PhD in economics, and he talks about economic eco-politics is what is kind of his thing. He's been very high up in government. He's very, very well respected, retired, and started a great blog. I've recently gotten familiar with him, and I read it quite often. And he says that the words that doomed Trump when he declared war before he had his army assembled, and he's talking about his administration. In other words, Trump came out and unfortunately, bad reference, but John F. Kennedy did the same thing. When he came out and talked about doing away with the Federal Reserve and other things. There is nothing, and here's what Trump said, there is nothing the political establishment will not do and no lie they will not tell to hold on to their prestige and power at your expense, talking to the country. The Washington establishment and the financial and media corporations that fund it exist for only one reason, to protect and enrich themselves. This is a crossroads in the history of our civilization that will determine whether or not we, the people, reclaim control over our government. The political establishment that is trying everything to stop us is the same group responsible for our disastrous trade deals, massive illegal immigration, and economic and foreign policies that have bled this country dry. Now that I'm reading this, I understand where it came from. It came from his inauguration speech, Trump's inauguration speech. I remember hearing it. The political establishment has brought about the destruction of our factories and our jobs as they flee to Mexico, China, and other countries throughout the world. It's a global power structure that is responsible for the economic decisions that have robbed our working class, stripped our country of its wealth, and put that money into the pockets of a handful of large corporations and political entities. He's absolutely correct. He's dead on the money, and that's part of the problem. That's why they don't want him in office. That's why this deep state, these neocons, these New World Order, these Agenda 21, these, what else are they called? Liberals. I think that the demise of the Democrat Party is just a side effect of what these people are trying to do. And that's what I wanted to get into tonight was, there's a hashtag out there. Supposedly, former President Barack Obama has 30,000 people that are doing his bidding in terms of this shadow government to bring down Trump or to keep Trump from being effective. All right?
Yeah, I heard that.
That's crazy. This article talks about Flynn being the first victim of Obama's Russia witch hunt against Trump. This was all set up, if you'll remember, after Trump got elected, but before he took office. We were all on pins and needles whether we were going to go to war with Russia or not before Trump could ever get in office, because they were accused of tampering with our elections. They were accused of supporting Trump before he got elected, so that's why he got elected, and yada, 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 yada. It was all about Russia this and Russia that. And Trump today talked about, to hear everybody talk, or to, at least to hear the mainstream media and the other side talk, being friends with Russia is a bad thing. And it's not. It's just in Trump's mind, and I can't help but agree with him. Mm-hmm. In today's world, we do not have room, nor time, nor money, nor anything to be going to war with a former superpower, be it Russia, be it China, be it anybody. That's not what we need to be about. We need to be about showing the world how to get out, not how to get out of it by sticking your tail between your legs and running off, but how to get out of it by negotiating a more positive result for both sides. Mm-hmm. One of the things that they teach us in negotiations is, if you can't figure out how to divide the pie, make the pie bigger. Duh. Make it a bigger pie. Then it's going to be easier to cut up. So join hands, partner, figure out a way to make it bigger and better, and then there's room for everybody. I can assure you Mr. Trump knows that axiom, and more probably. One of the questions that's being raised through all of this, and I'm not sure if I buy into it, but you have to lay dots out there whether they stay connected or not. Sometimes they have a dotted line to them. Everybody that Trump has appointed, everybody that he's put out for a cabinet position has been met with ferocious resistance. Some of it even from his own party. Republicans voted against, who was it? Jeff Sessions, and Vice President Pence had to step in and break the tie. When the Republicans have a majority, they still couldn't pull it off without Pence having to break the tie. Mm. So there's all and the rumors and innuendos and just pure nonsense, It
just goes on and on. Mm-hmm.
Who cares if Jeff Sessions kissed a little girl when he was 7 without her permission? That's what I felt like they were talking about, Oh, he gave somebody a Valentine in the first grade and she didn't want it. He's a sexist. Or whatever they call him. It was just stupid. Who's the only person in the entire administration that is not taking these hits? One individual. The former head of the Republican Party, Reince Priebus. You would hate to think that his own chief of staff would not be absolutely on his side. And according to Mr. Trump, he is. So that's one of those things that I'm just saying. And I'm not just saying it. I got an article in front of me that brings it up, or I would not have thought about it, but it makes sense. Okay, this one says the neocons and the deep state. Do you know what do you fully understand what I'm talking about when I say the deep state? It's when you talk about a shadow government, that's what Obama's putting together. The deep state is the high-ranking members of the CIA and the FBI and all of these 3-letter acronym agencies that have tied their entire persona, not just their livelihood, but their persona is attached to their power in government. If Mr. Trump is going to take that power away, is going to actually make them do their jobs and work for the administration that is in office, which is his, then they are fighting back, and they're fighting back very, very hard. For instance, they caught 3. I'm going to do a left turn on you, but you'll figure it out. They caught 3 Muslim agents spying on Trump. And the proof points directly at Obama. These are three brothers that Obama forced into positions. They were, the people that they worked for were congressmen. The congressmen were told to hire these three individuals as IT technicians. And they are not very nice guys to begin with. They had all sorts of history before they ever got there. But the president himself, through his control and power, placed these three characters inside three different congressional offices where they had access to basically everything.
Everything, yeah.
Right. And if you're not familiar with cybersecurity, which is internet security, computer security, the greatest threat to internet or cybersecurity is insider access. Mm-hmm. It's the hardest thing to detect and to stop. So they caught these three Muslim brothers who had been put in their positions. And by the way, for those of you who are wondering, you can look it up on the Google. One of the congressmen happened to be the congressman from my very district, who is now talking about running for the Senate. One of three. And they did it, I'm sure, because they were trying to curry favor with the president who was in power and in charge of their political party, and will be for quite some time, unless something extraordinary happens. Are you beginning to get the picture of what I'm talking about? Are you beginning to see the dots connecting up between the Flynn thing and Russia and the deep state, the military industrial complex? And that's basically what President Trump is trying to politely tell the press. And I mean, he's already told the American public, and the American public said, yeah, you're right. We need you in office. It's what he told them today. I won. What is it about that you don't understand?
Yeah.
You know? Mm-hmm. I still can't think of that movie.
The one from yesterday?
Yeah. Annette Bening.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Anyway. I can hear the line, and I can hear the line, but I can't think of who it was. So, let me take a breath. I want you to hear two quotes from a good radio friend of ours, a fella up in East Tennessee by the name of Pastor Greg Locke. We've had this young man on the show as often as possible, and Pastor Locke is just, he has got a rifle. Well, how do I draw the pellet? He is a dead aim. He does not miss his target. I'd like for you to hear, we're going to do back-to-back quotes. One of them about how he voted in the election, and the other one about who is in charge. All right? Mm-hmm. It's surefire. Head them out.
Hey guys, Pastor Greg Locke here. Since everybody's making a fuss over who to vote for, let me tell you what I voted for yesterday. I voted for continued religious liberty and the freedom to be able to stand up and speak out according to my beliefs. I voted for my Second Amendment rights and to keep the hands of big government off of my guns. I voted against the continual murder and butchering of babies. I voted against open borders and for stricter security if you're going to call America your home. I voted against lies, deception, overspending, and all-around stupid government. I voted that we don't make deals with ISIS and radical Islamic terror groups, but rather we call them out for who and what they really are. And of unbelievable importance, I voted for conservative appointments to the Supreme Court, because that's going to have a lot to do with what happens in this nation we call America. So I'm not voting for a person or a party. I'm voting for our future. Hey guys, Pastor Greg Locke here. You know, the Bible says that the Lord is upon his holy throne and his eyelids try the children of men. You better know something about the King of Kings and Lord of Lords that we call Jesus Christ. Nobody is going to take his place. He's not getting kicked out of office, no impeachment, and he is certainly not going to resign. He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning, and the end. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't care what happens on November the 8th or any other day of the year for that matter. God is very much in control of the affairs of men. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, and as the rivers of water, he turneth it whithersoever he will. God is in control. The God that said, let there be light, and raised the mountains and lowered the valleys, and tacked down the green grass with the beautiful roses and daffodils, and took the blackness of the midnight air, and flung the sparkling stars in their sockets. And the Bible says he knows how many hairs are on your head. He is in control. In the Bible, he's called I am. Not I was or I will be or one day I'll get around to it. He is the I am. So don't fear, don't fret, don't worry, and don't be full of anxiety. Because at the end of the day, when you and I and our little pea-sized brains are cold, dead, and 6 feet in the ground, God will be on the throne and the Bible will still stand like the rock of Gibraltar. So let's trust in a God who has all things in control.
Amen, Brother Locke. Thank you very much. I don't air that all the time, but I listen to it quite often. I like the guy. I mean, it's not just the tempo with which he speaks, it's the words that he says. And if you will recall, hold on just 1 second. Our opening quote tonight, good communication is stimulating as black coffee and just as hard to sleep after. Mm-hmm. That is what we're after tonight. So we've been talking about the deep state. We've been talking about the pushback, nonsensical, just stuff that's been going on that's in the media and that they're making such big hoop-de-la, falderas about. I mean, and then as if that's not enough, a bunch of basically the age group that is our primary audience, a bunch of pickle-headed nutcases get out there and follow Twitter feeds like hashtag resist or hashtag not my president or hashtag whatever, that's being driven by George Soros. And the first thing that you know, there's a young lady by the name of Devos. I think her first name is Betty or Betsy Devos. I don't know her, so I just call her Ms. Devos. Finally got approved as Secretary of Education. And lo and behold, the reason that they didn't like her was because she told them that their education system sucked and she wanted to do something about it. You can't tell us that. We've been in charge up here in government for 35 years. We've got the best education system on earth. And here's a lady sitting there going, nope, sorry, you sure don't. And I'm going to do something about it. And they wouldn't let her in. Well, they finally got it pushed through and got her approved. So the very first thing she did was go to a middle school there in Washington, D.C., and a bunch of knucklehead teenagers and young people blocked her from coming in. They showed up, as a mob and blocked her from coming in. She did probably what was the prudent and polite thing and turned around and left. I'm not sure I'd have done that. But she wasn't ready to draw the line. But the point is that's been going on. That's just the open resistance that we see. The challenging resistance is all this underhanded innuendo crap that the rest of them, they're all going through it. It is constant. It is incessant. And that's what Trump was trying to say in his press conference today. Here is a bit of a, not really the final, but something I certainly want to get out there. Evidence suggests Obama and Clinton are conspiring with Islamists to engineer a coup on the United States government. Liberals in the media make mountains out of molehills when it comes to Republicans, but hide the elephant in the room when it comes to Democrats. Democrats are engulfed in their hysteria of Trump derangement syndrome and have become enraged at the people who voted them out of power. Obama's weakening of America and empowering of the jihad has made the world and the nation so unstable that he believes he can engineer a coup to overthrow the Republicans. And they're trying. You're going to, no doubt, if you pay attention to real news, which is where we live, you're going to hear more and more about it. I will pay one mention to the dam that may be about to burst out in California at Oroville. They're headed for 6 days worth of rain. It doesn't look good. They're pouring 100,000 gallons, I think, an hour off of the spillway over to the side of the dam to try to keep it from bursting. And from all reports I get, the California government, headed by Moonbeam Brown, is in total denial the dam is fine. This is probably the same guy that thinks that we don't have an immigration problem.
Yes, that's right.
The borders are secure.
The borders are secure. Yeah.
So let's do it. I want to go back to because the title of the show was #resist, #resist. If you know how to read hashtag language, that means resist the resist. To my younger than usual audience, since the tag is delivering truth to youth, I'm going to give you, excuse me just a minute, I'm going to give you about a 10-minute clip of a podcast. What happened?
Okay.
Are we on the air?
Yes, we are.
Oh, okay. So that you'll be able to clip off and pass around with your friends. I would think that if you are a consistent listener of the show, you are not out there participating in these resistance marches to the government. You're not necessarily out there supporting Trump. I get it. That's fine. But you're not out there trying to undermine President Trump. That's even better. But you need to talk to your friends who are. They are making fools out of themselves. They are not doing the country any good. They are completely misguided. If you don't want to talk to them like that, you tell them how to get a hold of me. It's at Doc Owen Show on Twitter, or doc@docowenshow.com is my email address. I'm not going to give out my phone, but I'm tempted to. I'm tired of it. Somebody needs to talk some sense into their head, and it's a very direct line. There's no beating around the bush. They're idiots. They're being used. I feel sorry for them. I don't know how else to get it through to them. They don't have to support Trump. I'm not expecting them to wake up tomorrow morning and all of a sudden have the same logical brain as the rest of us. But they at least need to examine what they're doing. This is the United States of America. We say a pledge, we used to say a pledge to the flag that represents the United States of America. And we say, and to the republic for which it stands. This is not a democracy. Sorry. Democracies fail. We are set up as a democratic republic. Donald J. Trump is your president. He's not a dictator. He's not some, third world, jackleg, heavy-handed, boot-wearing punk. He's the president of the United States. duly elected by the process put in place of a republic. You owe it to yourself to either support or sit back and watch and see if you can support later. You're not being fair to your fellow citizens, and you're really not being fair to yourself to act out in such childish manners as you're being guided to do by representatives of the deep state, the neocons, the people that make money off of disruptions. If you don't know anything about the stock market, I don't think I've ever said this before, but you may not be aware. Everybody thinks that when you play the stock market, if the stock goes up, you make money. And that's true. But they think that's the only way you make money. That's not true. If you know what you're doing, you can make or you're very lucky, you can make an awful lot of money when stocks go down. If you've bought what's called a future, and you bet that the stock value of a certain entity or enterprise was going to go down, and it does go down, you made a ton of money on a problem. And if you've got a ton of money to begin with, you can buy people that'll help that stock go down. You can hire protesters. You can, pay them. They're
crazy.
It sounds nuts, but it's true. And it's going on right now. Mm-hmm. And if you are, I know that folks that are in those lines and doing that hashtag resistance crap are not listening to the show. And that's the reason I held this for the last, because they certainly wouldn't have gotten through the first 50 minutes of the show. But some of you have friends or acquaintances who are involved in that. I would like to think that you're smart enough not to do it. But you really, really need to crack the code and talk to your friends. Talk to your fellow American. Help them understand that the only way, the best way that we make America great again is if we all pull together. All generations, all genders, all colors, all ethnicities, all whatever. There was a time in this country before the hyphens came, and that's the way it was. It was simply understood. This guy won, that guy didn't. Okay, here we go. Mm-hmm. And that's how you do it. It's, even if it's got to be a little bit of blind faith, even if you don't understand why it's going that way, rest assured, as Pastor Locke just pointed out, it's all in God's hands. We're not in control anyway. But apparently God wanted us to go in a particular direction, so he helped Donald Trump get elected. Don't ask me how. I'm certainly not that close to it. But that's what we've got. President Donald J. Trump. Get over it. Get on with it. Let the man do the job he was elected to do.
And he actually wants to do it, too.
That's what's really blowing their minds, is he's following through with his campaign promises. Oh. Front row. Time to go. You have been listening to the Doc Owen Show. Thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate it. Now go out there this week and take care, pay attention, and God bless.
Bye-bye, folks. God bless.